Hi. In the summertime when it's very, very hot, we're outside gardening, doing chores, whatever you're doing. In the store, they sell these cool bandanas. They work on an evaporative process. So basically, it's either a cloth that's made with a polymer in it, or it's a cloth that has polymer inserted in it, and when it evaporates, it feels cool around your neck. Or you can wear it around your forehead, however you want. Okay. So they cost anywhere from $5 to $10 in the store, and I used to work as a cook for a boys' camp, and we made them for $1, $1.50 at the most, depending on what supplies you have. You can make them as cheap as 50 cents. The first thing you need is some sort of cloth. You can use scrap cloth around the house. These are bandanas that you would buy like in a department store. These are $1 each. These blue and red one were 2 for $1. Or any scraps, if you sew, of cotton cloth that has a moderate weave. Nothing really heavy like a denim, but something like a broadcloth, or for those of you who sew, or like a cotton sheet would work perfect, an old cotton sheet. So the first thing you're going to do is you would cut a long strip. You can hand sew it. I'm going to pass this one around, which we made for Helen for this week if she got hot. This is basically a bandana, and this is what it looks like before the polymer is wet. And I'll show you the polymer. I'll pass this around. This is sort of a fancy one we made because Helen's a girl. She likes fancy things. So what you do is you would wrap this around your neck, and then the evaporative process. This happens to be one with the polymer that's wet and full. And so this little bit of polymer that's in here is going to expand to be this, which you wear around your neck, and you can feel how cool. So I'll pass these around and you can see the difference. And while you're doing that, this is another one that I made that I'm going to put in water, and you're going to see how it expands, and I'll tell you just how much. Basically, it is just a long tube, and it is sewn on one end. And then I place a teaspoon of the polymer, which I'll show you, into it, and I usually sew it again in the center. That's so that it's evenly distributed in the cloth. And then I'll put another teaspoon of the polymer and then sew it another straight stitch. So it's basically 4 straight stitches. You do that by hand. So I'm going to stick this one in the water, so we'll see how it expands over time. Now the polymer, there's 2 ways you can buy it. This happens to be already has moisture already added to it. This was bought in the dollar store for $1. And a little more than half made that red bandana. So I used this already. Now they do sell these with scent. You want to get the unscented ones. But in the hardware store place like Home Depot and Lowe's, they sell the polymer. It's called Soil Moist. So you add it to your garden to retain the moisture when you water or your potted plants. So it is safe to use in gardens. It's safe for to use around consumption, so it should be safe enough to wear it around our neck because we're not consuming it. So you can take a look at these crystals and see what they look like when they're dry. They just basically look like large grains of sugar. And so with that and the 3 seams, and you soak it, this one is still, it takes, this is cold water I got out of the tap. It's starting to absorb, but this one will get as big with 1 teaspoon each. So this cost $1. The bag of Soil Moist, which will probably make 20, maybe 25 bandanas, cost, I think it was $2.99 at the local hardware store that I bought it at before we came. So, and how you just wear them around your neck, and it makes you feel cool out in the sun. So that was that, and Alan is supposed to get his soap cutter. We were going to cut the soap that we made yesterday.
How did those seams go again? Like, how did you?
Okay, so basically, if you're going to use a bandana, the way I did Helen's, which is the blue one, is I took it and I put wrong sides together. And then I sewed about 1.5 inches down, all the way down. Then I sewed one seam about this far in so you have enough to tie around your neck. Poured a teaspoon of the crystals in, sewed another seam in the center, poured another teaspoon of crystals, and then sewed a seam at the other end. If you were going to actually do the red one without the tail or the fancy end, you would turn it inside out so right sides are together. You could either sew it and then cut it, or cut it and then sew it, and then turn it right side out and then make your 3 seams. The one on the end. You want some room on the end to tie it where you're not going to have any crystals, because once those crystals expand, you're not going to. And you can see this one was made out of camo fabric. I thought, you know, Tom got hot. And so, and believe it or not, when we had the boys camp, they were traveling around Gettysburg and all the Civil War battlefields in Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and they had like 104 to 109 degree weather. And at first the men were just like, the boys aren't going to wear these. And then they pulled them out and they said that they all just loved them, and because that made them feel cool.
Kids were all slapping each other with them. Only one of them broke because one of them stomped on it and pulled
Well,
on
the boys were slapping each other with them. I can't control the behavior of the boys. I can only give them the tools.
How long will one of these last? Like the crystals?
It'll last. In terms of cleanliness, it'll last. Like if you don't want to use it, if you just let it lay out, the water will evaporate from it, and eventually, it'll go back to being the same as the blue one you saw, where it'll be dehydrated and you can store it that way. Yes, you can use it over and over and over again, and if you want to wash it, you just use a little soap, water, rinse it out, and then just let it air dry. So in the wintertime when you don't want to use it, if you just let it air dry, then it'll be perfectly fine the next spring or summer.